The fluorescent lights of Seattle Grace Elementary flickered as Marcus Webb stood outside Principal Harrison's office, his work boots still caked with sawdust from the construction site. His phone had buzzed during lunch break, another emergency call about his daughter, Emma. This was the third time this month. Through the frosted glass, he could see his 8-year-old sitting small and hunched in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs, her strawberry blonde hair covering her face. His chest tightened. Ever since the divorce 6 months ago, Emma had been a different child. Quiet where she used to be bubbly, withdrawn where she used to shine. Principal Harrison opened the door, her expression a practiced mixture of concern and exhaustion. "Mr. Webb, thank you for coming so quickly." "What happened?" Marcus asked, his voice tight as he moved past her toward Emma. The girl looked up, her green eyes rimmed red, and something in Marcus's heart cracked a little more. "There was an incident during recess," the principal began, gesturing to the chairs across from her desk. "Emma got into a physical altercation with 3 other students." Marcus knelt in front of his daughter, gently brushing her hair from her face. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay?" The girl's lip trembled. "They said mean things about Mom, Daddy. They said she didn't want us anymore, that she left because we weren't good enough." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Sarah hadn't left because of Emma, she'd left because of him. Or at least that's what the divorce papers suggested. Irreconcilable differences, her lawyer had called it. But Emma didn't know that. She couldn't know that her mother's new life in California, with her new partner and new job, barely had room for weekend phone calls, let alone visits. "So you hit them?" Marcus asked gently. Emma's small hands balled into fists. "I pushed Kayla first. Then Jake and Michael joined in. They hurt my arm." She pulled up her sleeve, revealing a small bruise already forming. Principal Harrison cleared her throat. "Mr. Webb, I understand Emma is going through a difficult transition, but we cannot tolerate violence. This is her 3rd behavioral incident. We're implementing a 3-day suspension and strongly recommend counseling." Marcus felt the familiar weight of single parenthood pressing down on his shoulders. 3 days meant finding childcare, missing work, losing pay they couldn't afford to lose. But looking at Emma's devastated face, he knew something had to change. "I understand," he said quietly. "It won't happen again." The drive home was silent except for the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers against the Seattle drizzle. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing through options he didn't have. His sister was in Portland, too far. His parents had passed years ago. The few friends he had were dealing with their own lives, their own problems. Emma stared out the window at the grey cityscape, her small frame seeming to shrink further into the seat. "Emma," Marcus finally said, as they pulled into the parking lot of their modest apartment complex in Beacon Hill, "I need you to understand something. What those kids said, it's not true. Your mum loves you. The divorce, it's complicated, but it has nothing to do with you not being good enough. You hear me?" Emma nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe him. Inside their 2-bedroom apartment, Marcus heated up leftover mac and cheese, while Emma retreated to her room. The walls felt thin, the space cramped. A far cry from the house they'd lived in before the divorce. He could hear her crying softly through the door, and every instinct told him to go to her, to fix this. But how do you fix what's broken inside? As he stood in the narrow kitchen, staring at the bills piled on the counter, past due electricity, rent coming up, Emma's school supplies on credit, an idea began to form. It was crazy, probably irresponsible, but it was something. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in over a year. Coach Ray Martinez. His old boxing trainer from his 20s, before Sarah, before Emma, when Marcus had actually competed in local Golden Gloves tournaments. He'd been good, not great, but good enough to know how to handle himself, how to channel anger and frustration into something productive. The phone rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Marcus Webb. Thought you'd forgotten about this old man." "Hey, Coach. I need a favor." That night, after Emma had cried herself to sleep, Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the old photo on his nightstand. Him and Sarah on their wedding day, both of them so young and hopeful. He'd been a different man then, softer around the edges, less weathered by reality. The divorce had blindsided him. Sarah's confession that she'd been unhappy for years, that she'd met someone else, that she needed to find herself in California. It all felt like a bad movie script. But the worst part wasn't losing his wife. It was watching his daughter lose her mother, piece by piece, week by week, as phone calls became shorter and visits never materialized. Emma needed more than he could give her sitting around this apartment, drowning in bills and guilt. She needed strength, confidence, a way to defend herself, not just physically, but emotionally. She needed to know she was worth fighting for, and maybe, just maybe, teaching her to fight would help them both heal. Marcus pulled out an old duffel bag from the closet, unzipping it to reveal worn boxing gloves, hand wraps, and a jump rope that had seen better days. The smell of leather and sweat hit him like a memory, transporting him back to Coach Ray's gym, to the feeling of power and control that came from knowing exactly what your body could do. Tomorrow, he'd take Emma to the gym. Tomorrow, they'd start over. He just hoped it wasn't too late. Coach Ray's gym hadn't changed in the decade since Marcus had last walked through its doors. The same faded posters of boxing legends covered the cinder-block walls. Ali, Tyson, Layla Ali. The same smell of sweat, leather, and determination hung in the air. The rhythmic sound of gloves hitting heavy bags echoed through the cavernous space like a heartbeat. Emma stood in the doorway, her small hand gripping Marcus's tightly, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. A handful of fighters worked the bags and speed bags, their movements precise and powerful. In the ring, two teenagers sparred under Coach Ray's watchful eye. "Daddy, I don't know about this," Emma whispered. Coach Ray emerged from his office, a lean, grey-haired man in his 60s with kind eyes and the weathered face of someone who'd seen both triumph and defeat. He looked at Emma with the same expression he'd once given Marcus, assessing, but not judging. "So this is the young lady who's been having trouble at school," Ray said, kneeling to Emma's level. "Your dad tells me you've got a fighter's spirit, but you don't know how to use it yet." Emma looked at her feet. "I just wanted them to stop saying mean things." "And that's exactly right," Ray said gently. "But there's a difference between defending yourself and starting a fight. You know what that difference is?" Emma shook her head. "Control," Ray said, tapping his temple. "Up here first, then in the body. Your dad was one of my best students because he learned that lesson. Didn't you, Marcus?" Marcus felt heat rise to his face. "That was a long time ago, Coach." "Muscle memory doesn't forget," Ray said, standing up with a slight grunt. "Come on, let's get you both warmed up." The first week was harder than Marcus had anticipated. Not physically, though his 34-year-old body protested movements his 20-year-old self had taken for granted, but emotionally. Watching Emma struggle with basic footwork, seeing her frustration when her small fists couldn't make the heavy bag move, reminded him of his own limitations as a father. But Coach Ray had a gift for teaching that went beyond technique. He worked with Emma patiently, showing her how to stand, how to keep her hands up, how to move her feet. He paired her with Maya, a 12-year-old girl who'd been training for 3 years and who took Emma under her wing like a protective older sister. "See, you don't punch with just your arm," Maya demonstrated, her dark braids swinging as she pivoted. "You punch with your whole body. Hip rotation, shoulder turn, then extend. Like this." Emma mimicked the movement, and for the first time in months, Marcus saw something flicker in her eyes, interest, maybe even excitement. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself falling back into old rhythms. The jump rope felt awkward at first, then familiar. The heavy bag absorbed his frustration. At Sarah for leaving, at himself for not being enough, at the world for being so cruel to an 8-year-old girl. Coach Ray watched him work, occasionally offering corrections, mostly just letting him sweat out the anger. "You're carrying a lot, son," Ray said one evening after Emma had gone to work with Maya on the speed bag. "More than you're telling me." Marcus wiped sweat from his face. "Just trying to keep my head above water, Coach." "That girl needs you present, not perfect," Ray said. "You're doing the right thing bringing her here, giving her tools, not just to fight, but to feel strong. That's what she needs most." By the third week, something shifted. Emma started asking to go to the gym even on days Marcus hadn't planned to. She practiced her footwork in the apartment, shadow boxing in front of the bathroom mirror. At night, instead of crying herself to sleep, she'd tell Marcus about what Maya had taught her, about how Coach Ray said she had natural talent, about how she'd finally made the speed bag maintain a rhythm. The change wasn't just physical. Emma started standing taller, speaking up more. When Marcus picked her up from school after the suspension ended, her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, pulled him aside. "I don't know what you've been doing with Emma, Mr. Webb, but she seems different, more confident. She actually participated in class discussion today, first time all year." Marcus felt a swell of pride mixed with relief. Maybe this was working. Maybe they were going to be okay. But the real test came on a Friday afternoon in late October. Marcus was working late at a housing development site in Redmond when his phone buzzed. Emma's school. His heart sank. "Mr. Webb, this is Principal Harrison. There's been another incident, but before you panic, I need you to know Emma handled it differently this time." Marcus's hands tightened on his phone. "What happened?" "The same 3 students cornered her after school near the bike racks. They started their usual taunts, but this time Emma didn't push or hit anyone. She stood her ground, told them clearly and firmly that their words couldn't hurt her, and walked away. When they tried to follow her, she found a teacher. She advocated for herself appropriately." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Is she okay?" "She's more than okay, Mr. Webb. She's in my office now and she's calm, composed. Whatever you've been doing, it's working. I wanted you to know." That evening at the gym, Marcus pulled Coach Ray aside while Emma worked with Maya. "She did it, Coach. She stood up for herself without fighting." Ray smiled, his weathered face crinkling. "That's because she doesn't need to prove anything anymore. She knows what she's capable of. That's real strength." Marcus watched his daughter move around the ring with Maya, her movements more fluid now, her confidence visible in every step. This wasn't about making her a fighter. It was about giving her back something the divorce had stolen, her sense of self-worth. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, "for giving us this." Ray clapped him on the shoulder. "You gave it to her, son. I just provided the space. Now the question is, what are you going to do with your own training?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean? You've been coming here for her, but you're getting something out of this too. I can see it. You're lighter, less burdened. You ever think about competing again? Just locally, nothing serious. Give yourself something to work toward?" The idea was absurd. He was 34, divorced, broke, working 60-hour weeks. But as he watched Emma laugh at something Maya said, as he felt the familiar ache in his muscles from a good workout, he realized Ray was right. For the first time in months, he felt like himself again. "Maybe," Marcus said. "Let me think about it." Ray grinned. "That's not a no. I'll take it." The Seattle winter came early that year, bringing rain that seemed to seep into everything. But inside Coach Ray's gym, warmth radiated from the effort and determination of fighters pushing themselves to their limits. Marcus had been training seriously for 6 weeks now, and Emma had been right beside him every step of the way. It was a Tuesday evening in mid-November when everything came together in a way Marcus hadn't anticipated. He was working the heavy bag, focusing on combinations Ray had drilled into him, when he noticed Emma standing at the edge of the ring watching Maya spar with another girl her age. But Emma wasn't just watching. She was studying, her green eyes tracking every movement, every defense, every counter. "You want to try?" Maya called out, breathing hard as she touched gloves with her partner. Emma looked at Marcus, uncertainty flickering across her face. They'd been working fundamentals for weeks, footwork, basic punches, defense, but she'd never actually sparred, even lightly. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow and walked over. "Only if you want to, sweetheart. No pressure." Coach Ray appeared beside them, his timing impeccable as always. "Maya will go easy, just light contact. Headgear, mouthguard, the works. But Emma, you need to understand, this isn't about winning or losing. It's about trusting yourself." Emma nodded slowly, her small jaw set with determination that reminded Marcus so much of himself at that age. "I want to try." 20 minutes later, Emma stood in the ring across from Maya, both girls properly geared up, Coach Ray between them explaining the rules. Marcus stood ringside, his heart pounding harder than it had during his own training. Every parental instinct screamed at him to stop this, to pull her out, to keep her safe. But he recognized the look in her eyes. She needed this. "Touch gloves," Ray instructed. "Remember, this is about technique and control, not power. Got it?" Both girls nodded. The bell rang. Emma's first movements were tentative, her guard high like Ray had taught her. Maya circled slowly, offering openings, encouraging Emma to engage. Marcus watched his daughter's footwork, better than he'd expected, maintaining distance, not getting backed into corners. Then Maya threw a slow jab. Emma's reaction was instinctive. She slipped it just like they'd practiced, countering with her own jab that caught Maya's glove with a satisfying pop. "Good," Ray called out. "Stay active, Emma." For 3 two-minute rounds, Marcus watched his daughter transform. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was present, focused, responding rather than reacting. When Maya increased the pace slightly, Emma adjusted. When she got tagged with a light shot to the headgear, she didn't panic or freeze. She reset, breathed, continued. When the final bell rang, both girls touched gloves and hugged. Emma was breathing hard, her face flushed with exertion, but she was grinning, really, genuinely grinning in a way Marcus hadn't seen since before the divorce. Ray lifted both their gloved hands. "Both of you showed heart today. Emma, you've come a long way in just a few weeks. You should be proud." As Marcus helped Emma out of the ring and removed her headgear, she threw her arms around his waist. "Did you see, Daddy? I did it. I saw, baby girl. You were amazing." He felt tears prick his eyes and didn't care who saw. The real impact of Emma's transformation became clear the following week at school. Marcus got another call, but this time it was Ms. Rodriguez, not the principal. "Mr. Webb, I wanted to share something that happened today that I think you'll appreciate," she said, her voice warm. "We had a new student start in our class, a girl named Jessica who just moved here from Texas. She was eating lunch alone, looking pretty lost, and I saw Emma approach her." Marcus listened, his hand pausing over the circular saw he'd been operating. Emma sat down next to her, started conversation, made her feel welcome. Then when I saw them at recess, Emma was introducing Jessica to other kids, making sure she had someone to play with. It was remarkable leadership from someone who, just 2 months ago, was struggling herself. "That's my girl," Marcus said quietly, emotion thick in his throat. "There's more," Ms. Rodriguez continued. "Kayla, Jake, and Michael, the students from the original incident, they tried to make some comments about the new girl. Emma stepped in immediately, not aggressively, but firmly. She told them that Jessica was her friend and they needed to be kind or leave them alone. And you know what? They backed down. They actually apologized." After the call ended, Marcus sat in his truck for a long moment, watching rain streak down the windshield. His daughter had found something inside herself that he'd worried the divorce had destroyed. Compassion, courage, the ability to stand up not just for herself, but for others. The training hadn't made her harder. It had made her stronger, and there was a profound difference. That Saturday, Coach Ray pulled Marcus aside during training. "I entered you in the Northwest Golden Gloves preliminaries, Masters Division 30+. It's in 3 weeks. Marcus's jaw dropped. Coach, I can't. You can and you will, Ray interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Not for me, not even for yourself. For her. He nodded toward Emma, who was working the speed bag with improved rhythm. She needs to see her father fight for something, to put himself out there despite the fear. You've been teaching her courage. Now show her what it looks like. The words hit home. Marcus had spent months teaching Emma to face her fears, to stand up despite uncertainty. How could he ask that of her if he wasn't willing to do the same? Okay, Marcus said finally. I'll do it. The 3 weeks that followed were the hardest of Marcus's life. He worked construction during the day, trained at night, helped Emma with homework, managed the household, and tried to process the fact that Sarah had called exactly once in 2 months, a brief, awkward conversation where she'd promised to visit for Christmas but offered no concrete plans. But something shifted in Marcus during those weeks. The training gave him purpose beyond just surviving. Emma's pride in watching him prepare, the way she'd quiz him on technique, hold the pads for him when Coach Ray showed her how, tell her friends at school that her dad was going to compete, gave him motivation he'd been lacking. The night before the fight, Emma sat on his bed while he packed his gym bag. "Daddy, are you scared?" she asked, her legs swinging off the edge of the mattress. Marcus paused, considering lying to protect her, then decided on truth. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm pretty scared. But you're doing it anyway?" "But I'm doing it anyway," he confirmed. Emma smiled. "Coach Ray says that's what brave really means, being scared and doing it anyway." Marcus sat beside her, pulling her into a hug. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned it from you," she said simply. The preliminaries were held at a community center in Tacoma, a modest venue filled with folding chairs and the sharp smell of liniment. Marcus's opponent was a construction worker like himself, 36 years old, fighting for similar reasons, trying to prove something to himself, trying to feel alive again. Emma sat ringside next to Coach Ray, wearing a hand-painted sign that read, "Go, Daddy, go," in rainbow letters. The sight of it almost undid Marcus completely. The bell rang. Marcus's body remembered what his mind had forgotten: the footwork, the rhythm, the constant calculation of distance and timing. His opponent was strong but predictable, throwing heavy shots that Marcus slipped and countered. Round 1 went to Marcus on all 3 judges' cards. Between rounds, Coach Ray worked his corner. "You're doing good, but you're thinking too much. Trust your training. Trust yourself." Round 2 was harder. Marcus took a solid shot that rattled him, reminded him he was 34 and not 20. But instead of panicking, he clinched, cleared his head, went back to basics. He heard Emma's voice cutting through the noise. "You can do it, Daddy." Round 3 was a blur of controlled aggression. Marcus pushed the pace, working combinations Ray had drilled into him hundreds of times. His opponent tired visibly, his guard dropping. With 30 seconds left, Marcus landed a clean right hand that dropped his opponent to 1 knee. The referee counted 8, 9, 10. The fight was over. As the referee raised Marcus's hand, he looked immediately to Emma. She was on her feet, tears streaming down her face, jumping up and down with unbridled joy. Coach Ray was grinning, nodding his approval. In that moment, Marcus realized something profound. He hadn't won this fight for himself. He'd won it for her. To show her that setbacks aren't endings, that starting over is possible, that pain can be transformed into strength. 2 weeks later, on a crisp December morning, Marcus and Emma walked into Seattle Grace Elementary together. It was the winter showcase, where students presented projects they'd been working on all semester. Emma had chosen to present on Courage and Resilience, featuring photos from the gym, quotes from Coach Ray, and a video of her sparring with Maya. Principal Harrison approached them in the hallway. "Mr. Webb, I wanted to thank you. The change in Emma has been remarkable. She's become a leader in her class, and we've seen a reduction in bullying incidents across the board. Her story has inspired other students. As Emma set up her presentation board, adding the final touch, a photo of Marcus with his arm raised in victory, she looked at her father with pride. "Daddy, do you think Mom will ever come back?" she asked quietly. The question still hurt, but Marcus had an answer now. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I know this. You and me, we're a team. We're stronger together than we ever were before. And no matter what happens, we've got each other." Emma smiled, a genuine, confident smile. That's enough. And as Marcus watched his daughter present to her class with poise and confidence, speaking about the lessons she'd learned about turning pain into power, about defending yourself and others with courage rather than anger, he realized she was right. It was more than enough. It was everything.